Okay, I haven't made one of these in a while, but I'm gonna make this one off of Frost's Animosity build. I've been trying to think about how I want to go about this because while I do enjoy how creative and experimental he is, I want to add to the fact that I, the Animosity build is fun. It is really fun. I do play with it occasionally, just for fun and memes, everything that kind of revolves around it. And yet, it's really awkward too at the same time because Animosity is magical damage and it doesn't work off of a lot of physical items besides executioners and just straight up pen reduction in general, and that doesn't revolve around physical pen shred. So this is going to be really difficult. But he pointed out with the original Hachimosity that it only worked with Hachi because he has mana sustain, and the start that you do is really rough on most hunters because he's the only one with mana sustain with this passive. And in my head, you could think of ways to work around that, and I did while keeping his builds intact. Now he's come up with a different experimental Animosity build, which incorporates the hunters that utilize healing in their kits keep beneath, these type of characters. And while Charge Morning Star is a great starting for any hunter, this could work off of any hunter that wants to start this. I want to point out this doesn't have to work with healing hunters. This type of build can really just work with any hunter that applies auto attack damage. The only problem is that he was looking for, of course, healing in the kit naturally, right? Which is why he wants it on Keep It Beneath. And if we do look at his build that he jotted down in the video, he would go Dominance, Ninja Tabby, Oboe, or Toxic Blade, finish Animosity, and then would flex around with Akin's, Xe, or Aussie. And I kind of just left this right here to be the build that he settled on with Neath. And like you said, it's not a lot of power, you get decent flat pen, and then the 10% from Dominance. The problem that I have is I originally did this too. I originally did Dominance because it had mana sustain and it gave, of course, had the 10% pen. But the problem that I'm now realizing with Dominance is it doesn't work with Chin's, Oboe, or Animosity. Meaning, while this is a cheap option, it's not good for what you're trying to do with this build. And I'm probably being a little too... Oh man, I can't even think of the word. Finicky with it. Like, this is... Or maybe too picky with this. But Dominance just can't work with these 3 items because of its passive, where it only works off of your basic attacks, because only your autos are getting the 10%. You're not applying the 10% to any of these other items. So that's kind of like where like the huge struggle is. I do want to give props though to Toxic Blade actually amplifying Animosity's damage. This is probably like the best pickup with if you're going Animosity, and you have to incorporate this. Unfortunately, I'm gonna say it. I don't like Toxic Blade on Hunter builds because it applies no power. But to make up for it with Animosity, it actually kind of goes hand in hand. Like, if you're going no power with Animosity, it's better to just make this item better with this item. It's like they both go together. It's just kind of what happens. And to add to this, I just saved on CERN just so we could do this a little bit faster. This is going to sound very weird, and I might go into a jungle practice to maybe explain this start, because this looks very janky if people notice this. If you go tier 1 Morningstar, then tier 1 Spike Gauntlet, you get 15 power, which is a little under what a lot of the starter items plus another tier 1 is. But it's cheaper, you get more pots with your sustain, and these items build into other items that are also very cheap, or they give you mana sustain. For instance, Spike Gauntlet, this is kind of the origination from the first build he did, which is Soul Eater, which has the 10% physical penetration. It gets 15% lifesteal, 15 more power, and keeps the cooldown, and of course the ability to heal from your abilities, which is pretty nice for ability hunters, and it just has lifesteal in general, which is probably really useful. On top of the, of course, pen. That's really nice. The Morning Star, it's 10 power, 5 MP5, which is actually a good jumping off point for your mana sustain that you want to keep in. I know this is very janky, and a lot of people will look at this and think you're trolling. But if you're already going Animosity, you might as well just have fun with it and commit, really, to how whack this is. So through my testing, I've realized that if you're going into this tree, the options that you have aren't dominance, but it's either Heartseeker or Transcendence. And to keep in theme with, the lack of power, it's like you could go Transcendence because you need that power, or you just go Heartseeker because on top of the amount of power that you have, it also has Pen. So while I wish I knew how to edit shit. I think if we looked at the Neath build, I'll just do it real quick. I think that had 130 power with, I think, more attack speed. Yeah, so it's 130 power, almost at the cap of attack speed, and then a decent amount of pen. It's not the greatest, but it has a good amount of pen. If you go to the certain one that I have, 30 more power, you're just barely under that attack speed, and then of course you have decent amount of lifesteal. This would be 15. You have that flat pin from Toxic Blade, and then of course the 20 on top of Heartseeker and Soul Eater. So you get 10% more from these two items. Now, I also added in with Xe onto Frost's build. If you sell shoes, I also did the same for me, just to keep the variables the same. The only reason why Xe is here is because if you try to incorporate any other item, it's not enough damage. You can use Ichavolt, it's not enough. Anilanas, it's not enough. Void, Shifters, like Bloodforge, Divos, Trance, any other item, it's not enough. The amount of pen that Xe has is so much that you actually are shredding more, and you're actually doing more damage overall. And it also helps with your chins, which is actually very important, and it helps with your Heartseeker. It helps all of your physical damage. The only problem is it doesn't help with Animosity. That's the only sad thing. Other than that, I really just want to say this build is fun. I don't want to critique Frost too harshly, but I don't like how he says you are only allowed to go certain hunters for these builds. I think if you are building a build, it should incorporate a mixture of more than at least two, because then they become niches. And I don't think if you want to incorporate an item like Animosity, it should be niche, because Animosity is really great, of course, on auto attack people like warriors, assassins, AA characters in general. It's really great. So when you're limiting it to Hachi, Neath, Cupid, it just becomes it feels like it's a niche item, and I don't want it to be that, because this item is really fun, it's unique, it does a lot of things different from the normal of Smite. And while the build in general is what he was kind of pointing out to his newer video, which is it's not intuitive. I think that's what he was getting at. He talks a lot better than I do. The build is fun. And while this looks janky in itself, I think this is probably the best bet you were going to get with the build. Going through numbers, going through different variables, this probably is the best variation of the Animosity build, if we want to make it able to flex to multiple people. And a lot of people might see this and think it's joking or it's trolling. It's obviously that's what it looks like. But if you were to experiment and you were trying to break the mold of what is normal and what people view as the meta, then this is what you have to do. You have to think outside of the box. And this is one of the ways of doing it, I think. If we want to compare these two things, like I said with these two starter items, I can hop in a jungle practice and show you that it's not that much different. I'll just use a simple variable like Apollo. I know I'm saying variable, but okay. So before going into this, I want to point out that, of course, the start looks janky and terrible. It's in fact better than starting most starter items. Of course, Charge Morning Star is going to be a better level 1, 2, and 3, but getting that lifesteal is more important for the long run of the game and how long the game will go on. Sorry, I'm hiccuping. Okay, so what's very interesting is if we look right here at our basic attack power, it's 58 and then the 15 power. If we were to get something like a Gilded Arrow, which is kind of where the premise of these two items come from, already if we just get Gilded Arrow, we're at the 58 because that's how much power scales back over into us, and physical auto attacks scale 100% off of our physical power. So what ends up happening is, while you have that 58 basic attack power, let's just add a T-Run Spike Gauntlet so we get a little bit more. So now we're at 63. Autoing a normal bot will be 53, and then ability will be 79. If we were to keep the Spike Gauntlet but get the Charred Morningstar, Tier 1 Morningstar, you'll notice that we might be adding a little bit less, but our ability will be doing more. So this is kind of like the weird variable that people are going to be looking at. If you were more of an ability-based person, doing this is obviously really great for you, and autoing is going to hurt you a little bit in the long run because this looks super janky, but the pots you get are very nice because you get 3 of each, meaning you have actually a longer time in lane and you're actually a lot more sustained than people think. When you back, obviously you're getting your boots, so now you move, autoing more, and then after you back again, you're getting these really cheap lifesteal option. It's going to scale very well. This thing literally finishes in like 2 minutes. That's how fast, like, Soul Eater stacks. After this, honestly, I think I just got Benevolence here when I was testing it in live games after trying to figure out a way to help his experimentation out. So after this, you're going to be scaling more with Benevolence. You don't even finish this off. You can even, with this, you actually get 10B5 and then the 5 here, which is 15. So you don't even need to level this up yet until you Heartseeker, because Heartseeker is very fucking expensive. And you don't want to do that. So if you want, you could go right into Chin Size, or you can go into Toxic Blade. One of the two. Really doesn't matter. If you're ahead, probably get Chin Size.
Yeah, I like that.
Or actually, take that back. If you're ahead, get Toxic Blade, and then get Chin Size. So let's say we're ahead, and then we get the Chin Size. Right? And then this will finish off Animosity, get the Heartseeker, sell this for XC when we get to late game. And then you should be able to shred anyone that comes in contact with you. The only unfortunate thing is it doesn't incorporate oboe, which is very useful in team fights, especially when you are at that late game stage. But if a tank literally runs up to you, they will be shredded. They will be afraid to actually be on top of you, because you're just going to be fucking hitting them for about 300 and auto. Around that, depending on how much, actually 300 is too much. It should be around 200. Like 150 to 200, depending on how much protections they have. With no protections, it's close to 300, but there's that.